I don't lose sleep for anyone, so explain why your name keeps showing up in the quiet like it owns the place. It's strange, isn't it? I've spent years building a life where nothing gets through unless I allow it. Every door guarded, every emotion filtered. I don't react. I decide. That's the difference. That's why I win. Or at least, that's what I tell myself when the room gets too still. Tonight, the city outside my window feels distant. Lights flicker, cars pass, people move on with their lives. And I'm here, standing in a room that suddenly feels too big for one man. There's a glass on the table I haven't touched. My phone is face down, like I'm trying to silence something without admitting it's there. But silence has a way of getting louder when you're hiding from something real. Here's the part I don't say out loud. I designed my life to avoid this exact feeling. Not love, not connection, dependence. Because dependence is dangerous, it makes you hesitate. It makes you second-guess decisions that should be clean and sharp. It introduces doubt into places where doubt can cost you everything, and I've seen what happens to men who let that in. They soften at the wrong time. They lose their edge. They lose. But then you showed up, and suddenly, control doesn't feel like power anymore. It feels like isolation dressed up as strength. Let me ask you something. Have you ever built a version of yourself so strong that there's no room left for anything real? Because that's where I am. Or at least, that's where I thought I was. There's a memory I keep replaying. Not even a big one. No dramatic moment. Just you. Looking at me like you could see through everything I've built. No intimidation, no performance, no reaction to the things that usually make people step back. Just presence. And I didn't know what to do with that. See, I know how to handle pressure. I know how to read people, anticipate moves, stay 10 steps ahead. That's my world. But you didn't play by those rules. You didn't try to win me over. You didn't need anything from me. And somehow, that made me feel like I was the one being evaluated. That's new. And I don't like new. New means unpredictable. New means I don't have control. There's something else I haven't admitted yet. I think part of me recognized what you were the moment you walked into my life. Not consciously, not in words, but somewhere deeper. There was a shift. Subtle, but undeniable. Like something I buried a long time ago. Just moved. And I ignored it. Because that's what I do. I ignore anything that threatens the structure I've built. I convince myself it's irrelevant, temporary, replaceable. But you didn't fade like everything else. You stayed, not loudly, not forcefully, just enough to make me notice the silence when you weren't there. And that's the problem, because silence used to be my advantage. Now it feels like exposure. There's a version of me that wants to shut this down immediately, cut it off before it becomes something I can't manage. I've done it before, walked away without hesitation, no explanation, no regret, clean exits, no loose ends. But this doesn't feel clean. This feels like, if I walk away, I'm not just leaving you. I'm avoiding something I don't fully understand yet, and that bothers me more than anything, because I don't operate in confusion. I eliminate it. So why haven't I eliminated you from the equation? That's the question that's been sitting in the back of my mind, growing louder every time I try to ignore it. Maybe it's not about you. Maybe it's about what you represent. Or worse, what you reveal. Because if I'm being honest, really honest, you didn't break my control. You made me question whether I ever had it in the first place. And that thought, that's dangerous. Because if control was never real, then what have I been building all this time? A fortress or a cage? I don't have that answer yet. But something tells me I'm closer to finding out than I've ever been. You think silence is peaceful until it starts answering questions you were never ready to ask. Last night wasn't loud, no chaos, no pressure, no deadlines chasing me, just a room, dim lights, the faint hum of something electrical in the walls, and my phone sitting there like it knew something I didn't. I told myself I wouldn't pick it up, not out of pride. No, I outgrew that kind of ego a long time ago. This was different. This was strategy, control. Because once you reach for someone first, you change the balance. You reveal position. And I don't reveal position. But then something unexpected happened. The longer I stayed still, the louder the urge became. Not desperate, not emotional, just persistent, like a quiet voice that refused to be ignored. So I picked up the phone, didn't unlock it, just held it. It's strange how something so small can feel heavy when your mind is fighting itself. One part of me was calculating outcomes, what to say, when to say it, how it would shift things. The other part didn't care about outcomes at all. That part scared me, because I've made a life out of predicting consequences. Every move has intention, every word has weight. But with you, intention feels unstable, and instability is where mistakes are born. Let me ask you something. Have you ever felt a moment where doing nothing felt harder than risking everything because that's where I was sitting, caught between two versions of myself, the one who always wins and the one who might finally lose control? I opened the screen. Your name was there. No message, no missed call. just presence. And somehow, that was enough to disrupt everything I had carefully built inside my head. Because now it wasn't hypothetical anymore. It was real. You existed in my world, without asking for permission. I started typing, stopped, deleted, typed again. There's something humiliating about that, not the act itself, but what it represents. Indecision, hesitation, two things I've trained myself to eliminate, but I couldn't eliminate this, and here's the uncomfortable truth. It's easier to close a deal worth millions than to send one honest message when it actually matters. Because money doesn't see you. It doesn't judge you. It doesn't expose the parts of you you've spent years hiding. People do, you do. That's why this felt different. There was a moment, maybe just a second, where I almost pressed send without thinking. No strategy, no control, just instinct, and I pulled back. Not because I didn't want to, but because I realized something I haven't admitted yet. If I reach for you without control, then I'm no longer the man I've spent years becoming. And that raises a question I wasn't ready for. Who am I without control? The room felt smaller after that. The air heavier. Even the silence changed. It wasn't neutral anymore. It was watching me. So I stood up, walked to the window, looked out at a city that never stops moving. That's always been my advantage. Motion, progress, forward momentum. But inside, I was stuck, frozen, by something I couldn't quantify, couldn't negotiate, couldn't dominate. And I hate being in a position where I don't understand the rules. You didn't ask for this. You didn't force anything. But somehow, you became the one variable I can't control. And that's dangerous. Because the moment a man like me loses control, he either evolves, or he destroys what's causing it. I went back to the bed, sat down, phone still in my hand, screen still open, your name still there. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't know what the right move was. Not the smartest move, not the safest move, the right one. And that uncertainty, it doesn't just sit quietly. It grows. It spreads. It starts asking questions you've avoided your entire life. Questions like, what if control isn't strength? What if it's just fear, refined? I haven't answered that yet, but I felt something shift last night. Something subtle, but irreversible. Because I didn't send the message, and somehow, that felt louder than if I did. Which makes me wonder, if silence can say this much, what would happen if I actually spoke? 3:17 a.m. is a dangerous time. Not because of what happens, but because of what finally stops hiding. The room hadn't changed. Same dim light, same untouched glass, same city breathing through the window. But something inside me shifted. I wasn't standing anymore. I was sitting on the edge of the bed, elbows on my knees, phone hanging loosely in my hand like it had already won. No notifications, no movement, just me, and a feeling I couldn't silence. And that's when it hit me. I wasn't thinking anymore. I was feeling. And I hate that. Because thinking is controlled, thinking is structured, thinking is where I dominate. But feeling doesn't follow rules, it doesn't negotiate, it doesn't care how strong you think you are. It just takes over. Let me ask you something. What do you do when the one thing you've avoided your entire life finally sits right in front of you and refuses to move? Because I tried everything. I tried logic. This doesn't make sense. It's temporary. You'll wake up tomorrow and this will be irrelevant. I tried distance. Put the phone down. Walk away. Reset. I even tried distraction. But the silence kept pulling me back like it had something to prove. And maybe it did. There's a moment I haven't told you about yet. Not because I forgot, but because I didn't want to admit it. I leaned back, closed my eyes, and for a second, I saw a version of myself I didn't recognize. Not the one people respect, not the one who commands rooms without effort. This version looked uncertain, exposed, and there was a question behind his eyes I couldn't ignore. What if you're not as in control as you think? That thought didn't just pass, it stayed, and it started pulling at something deeper, something older. See, this isn't the first time I've felt this. I've just been better at burying it. There was a time, years ago, when I let someone get close. Not close enough to destroy me, but close enough to teach me something I never forgot. That when you let someone see you, really see you, you give them access to something you can't take back. And I paid for that. Not loudly, not dramatically, but in silence, in distance, in the slow realization that I had handed over a part of myself I couldn't reclaim. So I adapted. I became sharper, colder, more precise. I told myself it was evolution, but here's the uncomfortable truth. It wasn't evolution. It was protection. And protection, if you're not careful, turns into isolation so slowly you don't even notice it happening, until 3:17 a.m., when there's nothing left to distract you from it. I opened my eyes again. The room felt heavier now, like it knew something I didn't want to admit. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel powerful. I felt human. That's not a word I use often, because being human means being unpredictable, emotional, vulnerable, and I've built my entire life avoiding exactly that. But there I was, sitting in it. No strategy, no control, no clear way out, just a feeling that refused to be solved. And here's where it gets worse. I realized I wasn't trying to get rid of the feeling anymore. I was trying to understand it. That shift, it's subtle, but it changes everything. Because the moment you stop fighting something, you start opening yourself to it. And I don't open easily. You did something I didn't think was possible. You made me pause, not react, not calculate. Pause. Do you understand how dangerous that is for someone like me? Because in that pause, things surface. Truths, doubts, questions you've buried under years of movement and noise. Questions like, what if I've mistaken control for strength my entire life? What if the reason I've been so successful is the same reason I've been alone? That one stayed with me. It still is. I looked down at the phone again. Your name hadn't changed. But my reaction to it had. It wasn't tension anymore. It wasn't resistance. It was curiosity. And curiosity is a problem, because curiosity doesn't stop at the surface. It digs, it explores, it pushes you into places you've deliberately avoided, places where answers aren't clean, places where you might not like what you find. I exhaled slowly, and for a brief moment, I almost accepted something I've been resisting all night, that maybe this isn't something I can control. Maybe it's something I have to face. And that's when a different kind of fear showed up. Not the fear of losing control, but the fear of what happens if I don't. Because if I keep sitting here, avoiding this, ignoring what's right in front of me, then what exactly am I protecting? And more importantly, what am I losing? I haven't answered that yet. But something about that moment, 3:17 a.m., the silence, the weight of everything I've been avoiding, it didn't feel like weakness. It felt like a turning point, and I don't know if I'm stepping into something real or walking straight into something that's going to cost me more than I'm ready to give. There's a lie men like me learn early, and we get rewarded for believing it, that if you build enough power, you won't need anyone. It sounds clean, efficient, safe, and for a long time it works. You wake up before the world does. You move with intention. You cut distractions without hesitation. People call it discipline. They admire it. They respect it. But they don't see the part where you start removing things that aren't distractions, just because they make you feel something. That part doesn't get applause. Last night, after everything settled into that heavy silence, I didn't reach for my phone. I reached for something else, an old memory, not one I visit often, a room from years ago, different city, different version of me. There was someone sitting across from me, close enough to understand me, but not close enough to stay. I remember the way they looked at me, like they were waiting for something real, not the composed version, not the controlled one, and I gave them nothing. Not because I didn't feel it, but because I didn't know how to allow it without losing something I had fought to build. So I chose distance, and I told myself it was strength. Here's the uncomfortable truth. It wasn't strength. It was fear dressed up in discipline. Fear of being seen without control. Fear of needing something I couldn't command. Fear of becoming dependent on something that could disappear. And here's the part nobody admits. When you win that way, when you protect yourself perfectly, you don't just avoid pain. You also eliminate the possibility of being known, completely. That realization didn't hit me all at once. It unfolded slowly, like something I had been outrunning finally caught up. I stood up again, walked toward the mirror across the room, not to check my reflection, but because something in me needed to face something directly. And when I looked, I didn't see weakness. I saw precision, control, success, everything I built. But behind it, there was something else, something quieter, something tired. Have you ever looked at your own life and realized you engineered it so well? There's no space left for anything unpredictable? Because that's what I saw. A life optimized for control, not for connection. And suddenly, that didn't feel like an advantage anymore. It felt like a trade I never fully understood. You did something I wasn't prepared for. You didn't demand anything from me. You didn't chase, didn't push, didn't try to fit into my world. You just existed. And somehow, that forced me to confront something I've been avoiding for years. That maybe the reason I've been so comfortable alone is because I've made sure no one ever had the chance to stay. That's not independence, that's avoidance. And it's subtle, dangerous even, because it feels like strength until the moment you actually want something real and realize you don't know how to hold it. I went back to the bed, sat down slower this time. Not restless anymore, just aware. Aware of how quiet everything had become. Not just the room, but inside me. There was no resistance left. No immediate urge to fix, to act, to control. Just clarity. And clarity can be brutal. Because once you see something clearly, you can't unsee it. I realized something in that moment. It's not that powerful men don't need anyone. It's that we've trained ourselves to ignore the need so well. We forget it's there until something forces it to the surface. And when it does, it doesn't ask politely. It disrupts everything. You disrupted me. Not by doing something extreme, but by making me feel something I couldn't categorize. Something that didn't fit into any system I've built. And now I'm left with a question I can't dismiss. What if everything I've been calling control was just a way to avoid this exact moment? Because if that's true, then this feeling, this uncertainty, this pull, this quiet tension, it's not a weakness, it's exposure. And exposure means something real is at stake. But here's where it gets complicated. Because recognizing the truth doesn't mean you're ready to act on it. There's still a part of me, sharp, disciplined, unshaken, that wants to shut this down completely. Cut it off. Return to what works. Go back to a life where everything makes sense. And I know I can do that. That's the dangerous part. I can walk away, and nothing on the surface would fall apart. But something deeper. I'm not so sure. Because now that I've seen this, felt this, understood even a fraction of what I've been avoiding, walking away doesn't feel like control anymore. It feels like retreat. And I don't retreat. But I also don't step into something blindly. So now I'm here, not confused, not lost, but standing in a place I've never allowed myself to stand before, between control and something real. And I still haven't answered the question that matters most. If I let this in, what exactly am I risking? Because it's not just time. It's not just emotion. It's something I've never put on the line before. And I don't know if I'm ready to find out what that costs. Morning didn't arrive gently. It exposed everything I couldn't hide from anymore. The light cut through the room like a verdict. No softness, no excuses. Just clarity sitting where confusion used to be. I hadn't slept, not really. My body stayed still, but my mind kept moving, running through every version of what this could become, and every way it could go wrong. And here's the part that doesn't make sense. I wasn't afraid of losing you. I was afraid of what choosing you would require me to become. There's a difference. I stood up slowly, walked to the window again. The city looked different in the morning. Less mysterious, more honest. No shadows to hide behind. No silence to blame. Just reality. And reality doesn't care about your comfort. By the time the sun came up, I had reduced everything down to two choices. Simple, clean, binary, walk away, and remain exactly who I've always been. Untouched, controlled, untangled, or step toward you. And risk becoming someone I don't fully recognize yet. Now here's the uncomfortable truth. Staying the same has never been hard for me. Growth? That's unpredictable. Growth demands you let go of certainty, and I don't let go easily. So I asked myself something I've never needed to ask before. If I remove the fear, what do I actually want? Not what makes sense, not what protects me, what I want. And the answer didn't come immediately. It never does when it matters. Instead, something else surfaced. Something quieter, more honest than anything I've told myself all night. I'm tired. Not physically, mentally, emotionally. Tired of always being the one in control. Tired of filtering every thought before it leaves my mind. Tired of winning in a way that leaves no one close enough to understand what it cost. That kind of tired. You don't admit that out loud. But I'm saying it now. Because you, somehow, made me aware of it. Let me ask you something. Have you ever had everything you thought you wanted and still felt like something was missing that you couldn't name? Because that's where I'm standing, at the edge of something I don't fully understand, but can't ignore anymore. There was a moment, just a brief one, where I imagined what stepping toward you would actually look like. Not the ideal version, the real one. Less control, more uncertainty, moments where I don't have the upper hand. And for a second, I almost pulled back completely. Because that version of me, he's exposed. And exposure, comes with risk, but then something shifted, a thought I didn't expect. What if the version of me I've been protecting is the one that's been holding me back? That hit harder than anything else, because it forces a different kind of decision. Not, do I choose you, but do I choose who I've been, or who I could become? And that's not a simple answer. Because who I've been, he's proven, reliable, effective. He doesn't hesitate. He doesn't second guess. He doesn't lose, but he also doesn't feel like this, and I can't ignore that anymore. So I went back to the phone, same place, same position. But I wasn't the same. There was no hesitation this time, no overthinking, no strategy, just a quiet understanding that whatever happens next, it won't be controlled the way I'm used to, and maybe that's the point. Here's the pattern interrupt you weren't expecting. The strongest move isn't always the one that keeps you safe. Sometimes, it's the one that makes you vulnerable in ways you can't predict. I looked at your name one more time, and for the first time, I didn't see risk. I saw possibility, but possibility comes with a cost, and I don't fully know what I'm about to pay, so I made my decision. Not because it was logical, not because it was safe, but because for once, it felt honest, and that's rare for someone like me. But here's what I haven't figured out yet. What if this decision doesn't just change my life? What if it exposes parts of me I'm not ready to face? Because stepping toward you doesn't just mean letting you in. It means letting go of something I've held on to for years, and I haven't decided if I'm strong enough to release it completely, or if I'm about to find out what happens when I finally do.